Can you hear me, please? Maybe you can confirm if we can hear each other.
Yes, we can hear
All
you.
right. All right. Thank you very much. Good evening. Once again, um, my name is Rendani. I'm one of the team members at APC or EPC rather. And today we thought we'll take this opportunity to just talk to you about our upcoming program. And I think it's always a good opportunity to have engagements like this so that we can always get an opportunity to get to engage with you, hear your views, and then make sure that when we kick off the program come next year, we are all aligned. So what we have tonight, it's a very short presentation with just 4 agenda points, or 3 rather. And you will also notice in the agenda that there is a point on questions. But I always believe that, yeah, if you've got anything that you want to clarify, as we go through this, you're more than welcome to do so. So as much as we have just a few slides, the engagements that I hope for all of us to have, I hope that they will be robust and then as many questions as regard upcoming program. And just first of all, the introduction of EPC. And here I'll also just talk about the plans for next year, but some of them will then further be elaborated on our brochure and in subsequent open days. But for those that are joining us for the first time, EPC, it's our stand, it's our brand that we offer the APC professional program under, and we essentially have 3 courses that we've planned for next year, which is firstly this APC comprehensive course, the one that we're going to be talking to and the focus of tonight's session. And then we're going to have what we refer to as the APC professional course, and lastly, the APC repeaters course. So both of all 3 programs are what one could call the accredited programs, leading to an outcome where you will be or may be awarded a certificate at the end of the day. In addition, we have just an offering where if you just want to write or participate in the case studies, then you can also opt for that one. So, as I said, the detailed information about those other courses is outlined in the brochure, which will be published before the end of the week. And also, information will be available on our website. But for tonight, the focus is the course that we will be launching in Jan, which is the APC comprehensive course. And you'll then get to just understand the idea behind it and also how we plan to use it just to enhance the support that we want to give you in the 2022 academic year. And in terms of just the introduction to the team, not to spend then too much time on this, if you've been with us in the 2021 academic year, or if you have attended our board course or CTA program, this will be some familiar faces. So the leader of the team or the academic head is Ferdinand, who then looks after the overall quality of the program. And then we partner with him in our capacity as the lecturing team and also the support team. And myself, as I said, my name is Rendani, and I focus on accounting, management accounting, as well as strategy and risk management. Then we've got Asen, who is our IFRS expert. So his passion is purely in accounting, but also is very involved in some of the tax technical competencies. Then we've got Kumu. Kumu is our governance expert and focuses on audit and assurance, as well as ethics and governance. So he will then be the one that you will be engaging with come what? Come audit and assurance or governance related queries or developmental processes. Then we've got Elton, who is also a familiar face. So Elton is our management accounting, strategy, and risk management expert as well. So he's been a lecturer in the CTA program at one of the accredited university for a number of years now. And he's also been one of the previous top 35 individuals under 35, quite a high esteemed accolade there. And in terms of APC, he's been involved with quite a lot. With him also being part of the senior marking team in the APC 2020. So looking again after management accounting and finance. Then lastly, we've got everyone who looks after our mentorship program. So you will probably only engage with when the mentorship phase kicks in, and that's just about at the end of the first phase of the program. And she will then walk you through in terms of the kind of engagements that we've had with the mentors for this year, some of the insights that they've shared, and some of the exciting elements that we've put together come come 2022 academic year. So this is essentially the team that is responsible for your development. So one of the things that we always want to make sure that you get the best of is to get the best of this team, meaning that in terms of the development that they will put forward, activities, being the lectures, being the tasks that you'll then be engaging with them on, and also just making themselves available. It's something that we always strive to ensure that it's a crucial element of the program. And we want you not to shy away, but to always reach out whenever you are unclear, whenever you are stuck, in order to benefit from this team before you. As you can see, it's a multidisciplinary team, meaning that we support each other throughout the academic year. So if, say, Asen is not available, then you've got myself. If I'm not available, you've got Elton, Fedi supporting the rest of the team there. So it's quite an involved team, and we always make sure that we work together to deliver the very best for you. And in terms of the support, we've got what we call the APC caretaking team. So the APC caretaking team are probably the team members or the individuals that you will be working and engaging with the most in the program. So they will be helping you with all the administrative queries, any support outside the technical that you may need. They will always avail themselves. And in terms of the key person, this will be Zelia, who is your APC candidate caretaker. And then she will also be the front person. In case you have any questions after the session, you will then be she'll then be the person that you can contact in order to assist accordingly. Then we've got Ndibuwo, who's our online controller, looking after everything related to My Universe, our platform that we use to deliver the program. Then we've got the finance team. And one of the things that we've then really thought about this year, it's just making the support to be much wider, to say that, yes, if there's a need to add more team members, that's something that we'll do. But one of the things that we thought will really add value will be just access to the management of the program. And this is then, therefore, where we took a decision to say that, yes, early in the process, we've got two key people, or we've got two key contact points, which is one through the APC coordinator. So the APC coordinator, that's the person that drives the what? That's the person that drives the program that you see before you. And then they work closely with the management team in order to just make sure that we are delivering the very best. So these two emails are those that whenever there are issues that need to be escalated, whenever there are issues that need to be handled probably by not the professional team and not the caretaking team, this will then be the key contact points that you can reach us on. But as I said, one of the things that we really have developed and pride ourselves with is just to make sure that you as a candidate, you never feel alone in the program, but you always have people that you can reach to and you can get the guidance that you need throughout the program. And you'll see that even the way that we have restructured the program, it has now enhanced the guidance that we'll be providing throughout the journey with you. So yes, there's still the complexity of the assessment journey, but what we believe will really set the program apart, which will really add value to you with us, will then be what? The guidance that we'll then provide throughout. So Fedi will then do what? Fedi will then take you through the program. And maybe before we do, if you have any questions, you can just raise them before he jumps in. Any questions from your side? All right. I think nothing. I don't see any chats. Fedi, you may jump in, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Rendani. And as you've mentioned, my name is Ferdinand Mukete. I'm excited to be taking you through the APC comprehensive course tonight for EPC. When we developed the APC comprehensive course, there were a number of considerations that were coming from the journey that we traveled with candidates in both 2020 and 2021 academic years. 2021 academic year has been a very challenging one, with a lot of candidates struggling with the core competencies that are being assessed at an APC level. So we then had we developed this comprehensive course to cater the needs of those candidates that struggled or are potentially going to struggle with a program that is assessing a professional competence. And why now? We thought, I mean, December is usually a time when people are relaxing. It's not a time when people are thinking about professional programs. These conversations usually happen in the second or the third month of the new year. But we thought, why not have an early start? And the reason being is that the development of professional competence is continuous. And the earlier one starts understanding what being competent is and how I'm going to be assessed as being competent, so that that's embedded in the candidate way before that assessment happens, is going to put a candidate in a very advantageous position come the assessment time. Then we reduce the risk of candidates not having the certificate at the end of the program. So, and then if you push to the next slide, great. So on this slide, we demonstrate three things. The fact that we are saying we're sitting here in December, on the 7th of December, 2021, we've got candidates that have either been part of a professional program and they were not eligible to a certificate at the end of their professional program. And we've got candidates that will be eligible for the APC 2022 because they just passed their ITC in the recent results of November 2021. As a result, these are the candidates that are now going to go through a professional program for the first time. So those are the two main groups that we are talking to in this evening session. So firstly, just to recap, we're talking to candidates that have been part of a professional program, but at the end, they did not qualify for a certificate for whatever reason. Second group of candidates that we're looking at are those candidates that will be sitting for APC 2022 for the first time. So they will be, they are only eligible for APC 2022, and mostly those candidates are the ones that have just recently received their results in November 2021 for ITC. So they wrote the September ITC. So we're saying to all those candidates, those two groups of candidates, to say, let's have an early start, because there are a number of elements that I'm going to talk to that we identified throughout the 2021 journey that candidates are struggling with, and hence the risk of not having a certificate or the risk of not being successful in your PSYCA APC exam. And if we were to then respond to those challenges that are challenging candidates and spread out that workload for a longer period than the 7 months that professional programs are usually for, then we would be able to achieve both the certification and the success in the PSYCA APC. And also, the second reason for doing this is to continuously align your development of professional competence with your training programs at your training offices. And you will see a lot of alignment between the two. And if you have an early start to this professional program and you really focus a lot on those skills that I'm going to be talking to early on in the period, and then continuously develop that you will be able to achieve success, not just on the professional program and not just at the SAICA APC. Also, you're going to be highly competent when we look at the work that you deliver at your training offices. Then the last group that might also just want to take up this opportunity are the candidates that either have CTA or have ITC, but are not going to be eligible for APC 2022 because they won't have 20 months of training at that time. But these candidates are on the journey, so they will probably be eligible in APC 2023. Then we're saying to those candidates, if you want to also have an early start and start understanding what it means to be assessed for professional competence, why not start early? Start the process early and go through it. And because it's also spread over time, then you're not going to be under pressure at any point in time to achieve success from the word go. So you could actually do the professional program for 2 years, and you will see from our brochure in terms of if you are falling into that category as to how our pricing and our assessments are going to be looked at. I'm not going to focus a lot on those candidates, but I do encourage everyone that will potentially at some point, especially in APC 2023, be eligible to write that psych assessment to register early on in our program, just so that you start developing those skill sets as early as possible. Thanks, Rendani. Now let's talk about what are those issues? What are those issues, and how are we responding to the issues that I mentioned, to say there's certain issues that we've identified from candidates that really need us to hone in and make sure that those are addressed in our program and are addressed over a longer period. So, and maybe before I even talk about that, it does not mean there has been a complete overhaul of our program, but there has been a refocus of our attention to certain elements that one could say previously they were looked at either at a higher level or not spend a lot of time on them, but they were incorporated into the program. But now it's about a different approach. It's about making sure that the areas that are challenging candidates are elevated even more. There is time allowed for candidates to self-learn those elements and reflect on those and self-assess on those elements to make sure that there is a development of that competency. So this slide and will show some of the elements, and all of these elements have been part of our program previously, but I will elevate some where candidates have experienced lots of challenges. So if I look at our candidate support and our approach to professional competence, we provide a rigorous personalized feedback to all our candidates. So the feedback that we provide you is going to be detailed enough. It's going to be very personal because each assessment is looked at by a marker and get reviewed. And also the marker, what they do, they make sure that they provide candidates with rigorous feedback and detailed feedback about what exactly is the issue for the candidate that must be addressed. And you as a candidate you would have been given an opportunity to self-reflect after writing that particular assessment, to say, what should I have done? Why did I not get there? Before you even get the feedback from our markers, you would have been given that opportunity to self-assess yourself. And then with the rigorous feedback, this rigorous feedback is coming from different points. It's coming from your mentors, it's coming from your markers, it's coming from your fellow team members, because we always encourage that everyone is being assessed and be given feedback, because it's only with constructive feedback that you're receiving from your fellows, from your professional team, from your markers, that you, and from your mentors, that you will be able to grow as an individual. So at EPC, we believe strongly on feedback. Okay, so for all the case studies, you're going to be receiving all that personalized and rigorous feedback. But that, when I'm talking about case studies, that's when we are now in the full case study phase. And you will see when Rendani takes us through the different phases of the program, you will see that that is later in the process. That does not mean there is no rigorous feedback before then. When we are looking at the foundation of this program, the parts that we're talking about, that we're having an early start to start working on elements that we see are becoming an issue year in, year out on APC. In those, we will be using tasks to demonstrate what is expected of you as a candidate, as a competent candidate. And when we use tasks, those tasks will also be marked. Firstly, they will be marked by you as an encouragement to self-learning and self-reflection and self-assessment. Okay, you will then tell us what you've learned from that process, what you could have done differently, what you did well, and whether you think it's a competent response. And when I'm talking about a competent response, I'm just talking, is this a pass or is this a fail? Okay. And then as part of that rigorous feedback, you will then receive feedback from the external markers. When I use the word external, I just want to emphasize that it's an independent marker from you to then say, what do they think? Having been trained to mark and assess fairly and consistently, what is their feedback? And what should the candidate do differently next time? What should they go out there and develop? And that will enable you as a candidate to then compare your self-assessment with the assessment from an independent marker and say, are we aligned? And as the program continues and evolves, I'm hoping that in the latter months of the year, you will have an alignment between what the independent marker assessment and your self-assessment are saying. And there definitely needs to be an alignment. So the second pillar in our approach is comprehensive guidance through the APC process. We really provide you with sufficient guidance, and our guidance comes in a number of ways. It comes in the support from the professional team that Randani introduced, the support from the administrative team and the support team, and then the support from the mentors, and the support from your fellow team members. So that guidance in most instances come in written form so that you can always go back and refer to it. And in some instances, it comes through in the form of short videos for you to go back and rewatch every time you feel the need to do so. You'll have reflection videos after every case study to guide you through what you should have done in each step of the case study. So that level of guidance will continue in our 2022 program. Innovative mentorship program, absolutely. And I see people talking about the mentorship program in the chat box. And our mentorship program is quite advanced in such a way that each and every candidate is allocated a mentor that is reasonably available to guide the candidate through the program, through the concept of professional competence and what does it really mean, and getting really involved in the developments of the core competencies, where we provide the mentors with the tasks, we provide the mentees with the tasks. There's a feedback process between each other, there's a challenge between each other, and lastly, we formalize, and we're going to be formalizing the communication and the engagement between the mentors and the mentees to make sure that each and every candidate receives the same level of support from their mentors. Is not on a it's not dependent on how effective the relationship is. We enforce and we encourage that relationship by formalizing communication points. Not to say that the mentors and mentees can talk beyond the communication points, but they are encouraged to even top it up with more and more communication outside those mandatory communication points. Karabo, a very good question, and it's an interesting one because it goes to the point that I've just alluded to, that there will be a mandatory communication points. If I compare the 2021 and the 2022 program from a mentor perspective, what we have in store is to say there needs to be formalized mandatory communication points between the mentor and the mentee, and there must be feedback, and those must be recorded and closed off for each candidate to make sure that there is some level of accountability from both ends, and from both the mentors and the mentees, and we can understand that there has been some level of communication and enhancement of core competencies that were the points of discussion or on the agenda for each of those communication points. I hope I answered your question. I also see Rendani started answering parts of it as well. Another challenge, I mean, we always, in previous programs, our focus has been on business acumen, and those who have been part of our program before will know that some case studies are heavily weighed on business acumen, and we will continue doing that. But with 2022, our aim is just to also keep an element of saying, how does one ensure that this business acumen is continuous, meaning it's not just ring-fenced to a specific point in the program on the timetable to say, now we're focusing on business acumen. It's engaged from the beginning of the program to the end of the program. So if you enroll into the APC comprehensive course, then there will be a task in that period where you focus on the business acumen to say, what do we mean by business acumen? What do we mean by saying you understand the business, you understand the business model, how the business makes money, what are the risks that they need to mitigate whilst making their money, and to make sure that they still are sustainable and remain in the business. And how do they mitigate those? So that is, all those are around business acumen, and to say what are the socioeconomic factors, the economic factors, the legal factors that needs to be considered around a particular decision. So, guys, I think what is important when you look at that fourth pillar that will be strengthened in the program is right in the foundation phase, to say there must be a task that is heavily weighed on business acumen, to go and demonstrate how business acumen is being assessed, and how business acumen is being developed. And then later on in the program, once the full program runs, then you will be able to also see even more business acumen tasks within the concepts of case studies. And maybe it's at this point that I clarify that when are we talking about the APC comprehensive course that has an early start, is the program that Rendani spoke to say we will start early, meaning when we release the brochure, you'll see the kickoff of the program being towards the end of January, because between end of January and end of March, we want to focus on the foundational elements of competence. And the foundational elements of competence are the depth and the breadth of candidates' responses in any tasks that they are being given. And then later on in the program, once we deal with the depth and the breadth of the responses of the candidates across the competency areas that we're looking at, then we start unpacking what a competent professional is and running through our program, which will be from the end of March until the end of October or early November. So, and that Rendani is going to unpack when he's talking to the candidate's journey in the next 2 slides. So I don't want to go into the phases, but I just wanted everyone to understand why we call this a APC comprehensive course. Is because it has those 2 months between end of Jan to end of March, which is looking at the base, the foundation, and then from end of March all the way to end of October, now looking at different phases of the program, one being development of professional competence, then phase 2, when now we are going deeper into professional competence again, and looking at the core skills to say, how does one get assessed in a case study environment? And then lastly, we say, look, now go ahead and use the case studies, and the 3 case studies that we would have developed for you, and say, let's assess you, because now you've had an opportunity to be walked through the journey. You've had the opportunity to demonstrate it yourself using mini case studies and mini tasks. And now you've got a full case study. Go ahead and do this. So that is what we have in store for you. So I've talked you through the 4 pillars. So rigorous feedback, guidance throughout the APC process, mentorship program that is innovative, focus on business acumen, then effective communication skills. So in the foundational program, when we talk about effective communication skills, we will incorporate that. You know, when I'm talking about the depth and the breadth of your responses, that talks to communication. Will Rendani be able to coldly read your response and be able to understand exactly where you're coming from, and not have further questions before they assess you as competent? If Rendani is going to still be subjected to asking further question, then we will say, then your response is lacking depth, meaning it's not detailed enough to provide Rendani with all the necessary detail that he needs to understand your thought process and why you reached the conclusion that you reached. And also, another way of of effective communication and development of effective communication, which you will see in the program when it later on in the process, is that then we will have language experts that come and guide you through logical argument, guide you through um, 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 clarity of expression, guide you through how you present your documents, guide you through logic and critical thinking. So those language experts will guide you through that process, and then we will continuously be assessing and guiding you for every single task. We'll be saying, are you demonstrating all those things in that in those responses of yours? Brendani spoke to the professional team and their accolades and what they stand for. So the sixth pillar is to reassure you that the professional team is passionate and dedicated. And for 2022, we're even looking to reinforce the team to make sure that the capacity is adequate for the program. Pillar 7 that you see on our approach to candidate support, it's the support on technical competence. And this is an area that we saw in APC 2021 that candidates are falling significantly short. Candidates that are supposed to be in a professional program are assumed to be technically proficient. They are assumed to be they're assumed to be technically excellent. Why are they being assumed to be? It's because they've been through a 4-year academic program. They've been through a 4-year academic program and have passed, and they are assumed to have gone through an ITC and passed. So it's actually not an assumption, it's a fact. So that puts you in a very highly technically competent position. So now if a task is assessing other competency areas like critical thinking, business acumen, ethics, and it's built around a technical concept, the candidate is expected to maneuver through the technical elements and still be able to demonstrate that critical thinking, that business acumen, that ethical leadership. So it is quite critical that a candidate needs to be able to provide us with a response that has coverage of all the issues that needs to be addressed, all. And also, in addressing each of the issues, the candidate needs to go in as much detail in providing us with reasons and justification and supporting information as to why they are taking a particular approach, or they are making a particular decision, a particular judgment, or a particular view, or a particular technical treatment. So, and for EPC 2021, candidates were struggling either with the coverage or with the depth of their technical. And that's why the foundation phase is going to focus a lot on the technical tasks to develop and make sure that candidates are back to that excelling level of technical proficiency. And there could be a number of factors as to why the candidate's expected level of technical competencies has deteriorated. And it is a function of when did you pass your ITC? How long did it take you to pass ITC? How long did it take you to pass CTA? Yeah, there are a number of factors. So those are the things that we need to make sure that we cater for when you look at this APC 2022. And then pillar 8, we simulate the actual APC assessment, and we do this in a number of case studies. We've got 3 full case studies. So case study 1, 2, and 3, and the last being the third, being the last. And if you are competent in at least 2 of those 3, you get your certificate. If you are not, then you are given a supplementary case study. And then if you are competent in it, then you will be given the certificate. And the last pillar is just to say it's beyond academic support. We are a family and we are building the nation of CASAs. And for that reason, we need to be cognizant of the fact that the support is going to come in a number of ways. Okay. So those addresses our approach to candidate support and also just what we have in store for you in 2022. But I think maybe Randani is going to come in and then now start going into detail in terms of what our timetable is expected or is anticipated to look like in terms of the journey to take you through the program for 2022. Before that, I see a number of questions. Randani, if you could also just help me, because I see you've responded to some, but also if candidates have questions, they can just open the mic and we chat before we get into what do we do when? Yeah, Raise? You can
Hello, Fadi. Hello, Fadi. Are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And yourself?
Good. Thank you. Just for the question that I put in there, in terms of the case studies, so if you fail all 3 case studies, do you still get the sub, or do you have to pass 1 case study at least to get the sub?
You have to pass at least 1 case study. Remember, we say you need to pass 2 case studies before you get a certificate. So
okay.
A candidate that fails all 3 then will not ever be able to pass 2. You get what I'm saying?
Okay,
because
makes
then
sense.
You are left with
Yes.
the sub. So you would be expected to have passed 1 of the case studies. So you're given, you then qualify for the sub so that you get a chance to pass the sub so that then you
get
can.
2 out of 4.
Correct.
2 out of 3. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rais. Any other question?
Hello.
Hi.
I wanted to ask with regards to your points on Pillar 7. You said something about the biggest reason why candidates fail would be because of lack of technical knowledge.
Correct.
So what would you say would be the balance between me? How would I balance? How would I? Okay, I don't. Let me just rephrase the question. Is there a balance between technical and professional knowledge in this program, or am I expected to go and sort of brush up on the knowledge that I might have forgotten, or is there some guide to that? Because there's a lot. I mean, there's a vast of things that you could have forgotten in the last 3 or 4 months, or even 4 years. I just want from a planning perspective, how would one approach it, especially if it's I'm a first-time candidate?
Fantastic question, Rachel. Thank you. Yeah, and we often get that type of a question to say, what should one do to make sure they are back at being technically proficient? And our program is designed in such a way that you're going to have a number of tasks that have a technical element in them, and they will expose whether you are technically at the level that we expect you to be or you're not. And if you're not, what do you need to do to get there in respect of that specific technical area? Rachel, what is important for this program is not to get you back at 100% technical proficiency for every single examinable pronouncements of a CTA or ITC level. That's not what we're trying to do. Because like you said, Rachel, there's quite a lot that you guys have gone through either in CTA or ITC or the full academic program of 4 years. However, what is important for us and that what we will be doing is to make sure that you as a candidate, as soon as you are triggered on a particular technical topic, let's say IS-36 impairment of assets, once you are triggered, like once you are expected to be an expert, then you know what you need to do in a couple of days to get to that level. So the professional skill to be able to research and what to research and to study it and how to study it and to interpret the standard and how to interpret it and to back it up with examples and how to do it and to generalize. You see, I'm talking about IS-36. So the process, that is what we call the professional competence. So for us, what is important is to get you to be able to identify that IS-36 is not my good area, but they're expecting me to know it. It meaning it's being triggered, it's going to come into the assessment in 5 days' time. Am I able to do sufficient work smartly, with a strict time management to get myself there? And when I get there, I'm a subject area expert. And you will realize that I'm not saying I will do that for you or we will do that for you in every single examinable pronouncements. No, you are going to be taught professionally how to get there using guidance and tips and things like that as to how to do it. And then you go and do it for every single trigger that comes in APC. And not that you have to do it across all the elements, all the examinable pronouncements. You will do it on a need basis, but you would have known how to do it. For us is to how to do it so that in case I'm expected to do it, then I would know how to do it. Does that make sense, Rachel?
Yes, it makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you. Also, just want to, my other question is, it's just like in ITC, is there a list of examinable pronouncements for APC?
No, there's not.
So
it's like
everything is covered. Oh, oh God.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like at work. You never know what next going to be dealing with, right? So
There are
everything,
no exclusions.
there are no exclusions, there are no inclusions.
So why I'm
it's a-
asking this is, there's normally an examinable pronouncement list for ITC, and there's ones that are not specifically examinable. Are we expected then to go and brush up on those things that weren't examinable for ITC, and we expected to know them for APC? Like that insurance standard I never read in my entire life.
Yes, but remember for APC, before the day of the assessment, they will give you a pieces of the case study, and you will see that, in the case study, they talk about insurance and IFRS 4 or the new IFRS 17. Then you will know that, it's coming in 5 days' time. So what do I need to go and do? You get what I'm saying?
Okay.
Then you would have known the process as to how do I get myself to be an expert in the field, even for a standard that I've never read.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Got. And then on pillar 8, Randani just reminded me that we simulate the actual APC assessment, and simulating it means also it includes the logistical elements around the simulation of the assessment. What I'm talking about in respect of the simulation of the actual assessment is that our case studies, 3 of our case studies, when I say 3, I'm talking about including the sub. Usually the first one is online, but all the other 3 are venue-based assessments, so that then you experience it early on in terms of the computers, the e-writing software, driving to the venue, dealing with the registering the e-writing software, and all those emotions that come with, you would have experienced them at least 3 times before you go into the Psycha APC. Richard, I see you've got a question.
Yes, Ferry, thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to follow up on the previous speaker, the previous candidate. That would then it be a valuable use of my time for me to say, while I was doing my ITC, I wasn't too comfortable on this standard. Let's just take APRIS 9 as an example. Would I be adding value to myself to then go and brush up on the technical competence of APRIS 9 as an example, or I shouldn't worry, I should wait for the end of Jan?
Or you're talking between now and Jan, when we kick off the program?
Yes.
Whew. Richard, it's very individual specific, and it depends. I mean, some candidates had very hectic years and they need the rest. I would say rest. Okay, in that case. Some candidates didn't. They quite bored. I mean, a whole lot of you guys I know in here, you're quite bored, you're eager to start, you're not challenged enough at work. Pick a standard, an accounting, a tax, an audit standard that you feel you want to be an expert in, and like zone in it, read more about it, read more about the current affairs that relate to that particular standard. Like, do prepare, Richard. Do you get what I'm saying? Like do what is interesting you. So don't do it like you are preparing for an exam. I mean, when we are preparing for ITC or CTA, it's not about what we're interested in life. There is, like Rachel said, there is a list of examinable pronouncements, and I've got to know beginning to end. But for APC, it's like at work. We read and study and research and learn more about the things that interest us. So if I'm interested in financial services and working in a bank or working in an insurance company, bank, I'll go and study IFRS 9. I'll look at Section 24J for interest, Section 24JA, all those. You get what I'm saying? If I want to be an insurer, I will look at the Phase Act. I'll look at IFRS 4. What's the introduction with IFRS 17? So it's very personal. And you will see when we start introducing the mentors as well, the mentors will be sharing their own experiences in what interests them and the field of study that they're in. And you'll see that it's sort of like the framework is exactly the same, but we go through different paths. And Richard, then when we get into the case studies, then the case study will be very specific, whether we've triggered construction contracts or we've triggered agriculture, and then you are forced to go into that narrow direction. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? Rendani, maybe, yeah, like in the chat box, which one have you not responded to? You would like me to respond to, or you will take it?
Mokete.
Yes.
So it's Malajima. I just asked on the frequency of like the classes, and I hear there's like mandatory communication with like mentors and other related activities that come with the course. So I was just wondering how often are the classes, like I know it's going to be a very hectic year in terms of audit itself, and also take into consideration that we'll be doing the APC program. How often are the classes? And I want to know in terms of planning, yeah, how to work around that.
Yeah.
Because I with some of the programs, you end up doing too many activities that you don't have time to actually sit down, process, and work through like the given tasks in a way that you end up understanding while there's a lot of activities that take place.
Absolutely. And Malichiba, that's one thing that us starting early on will enable candidates to have time off to go and process, absorb, reflect, and work through what they've learned in their previous classes. So our classes are on Saturdays from 8 to 3 o'clock. So it's quite a packed day, but what we do is to try to have not all Saturdays being taken for classes. So in every month, it's a must that there must be a free Saturday. And in most months, then we'll also have 2 free months. So, and what we do is at the beginning, there usually is going to be only 1 free week. Sorry, did I say 1 free month? I think I said 1 free month, but let me rephrase. So in every month, let's say there are 4 Saturdays in a month. What we always aim for is to have one of the Saturdays being a free Saturday so that candidates can use that Saturday to reflect and just no activity from EPC. We aim not to have during the week classes so that candidates can continue working their normal overtime and normal work day, and those who are not to use the evenings just to catch up on the weekend stuff, reflect on those and the likes. And you'll see when we get to the case study period, there are more free period, because once you write the case study, there will be 2 to 3 weeks of the team doing the marking and you're doing the self-reflection with limited activity from APC. So then it's sort of like the program then slows down at that point.
Wait, 8 to 3 of like teaching on Saturday.
Correct. No, wait. Not of teaching, Malachima, of facilitating a discussion. Remember, now at this level, it's no longer teaching. It's something that you know, but we're facilitating the discussion.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Sounds intense, Malichima. What do you want to do in the afternoon?
No. Like I feel that like we're different types of candidates. So having time to sit and actually process the work myself, for me, I feel it's more important.
Absolutely.
Than spending like quite a huge amount of time in a class situation where I can't think. I'm just absorbing, but I'm not necessarily processing the information. Hence, yeah, the shock.
Yeah, no, I get you. But you will see when you start having fun, time flies, eh?
Okay.
But quite importantly, the point you're raising, Malajima, is that yes, we need to give you a lot more of those free Saturdays so that you don't get exhausted, and also that you make sure that you use the learnings from the previous weekends to really have time on your own, self-reflect, absorb and process, and utilize it yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Sydney?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to ask now, what facilitating? What are we mostly looking at? Are we saying, is it like a more of an ITC class where like we have like a case study and then we like dwell into deep on it, or what are we then actually talking about? Thank you.
Sydney, it depends what the session is trying to achieve. So there are different types of session. There could be a session where we are introducing a professional competency skill like critical thinking. And there are a number of techniques that one could be using. It could be a business acumen, and there are a number of techniques that one could be using where you want a candidate, not a candidate, but the facilitation team or the facilitators will be going through different materials and probing questions at the candidates, having a detailed discussion around critical thinking as a concept, and using an example task to demonstrate that. Or it could be a task that you were given before and you did it, and then the session is mostly just focused on the process that you undertook in responding to the task and challenging you as to where were the issues in your process and in your thought process and in your writing and in your self-reflection as to why did you think you did well when you didn't do so well. So the classes are very different throughout the year. So it's not like the classes are exactly the same. So yes, maybe feedback sessions, there is a theme for what we call feedback sessions and introducing professional competence skills. And there could be business writing workshops. So they are completely different, Sydney. Rachel?
Thank you. Sorry, my question was almost similar to Sydney's, but now I think you've answered that one. So what I want to know is, are the classes still going to be online or expected to attend somehow? Secondly, is there a timetable that we could potentially view now that possibly could give an idea of how the program sort of looks like?
Cool. I see Rendani wants to respond to both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Freddy. So, no, I was just thinking that, yes, I think the next couple of slides will probably clarify quite a lot of the questions coming, and maybe we can go through that and then just then take the questions thereafter. I think that might provide some clarity in that regard.
Agreed. Thanks, Rendani. Yeah, let's do that.
All right, sure. So just to then give you an idea of how the program will look like. So for those that were familiar with our structure for 2021, one of the things that will then be prominent is that the program has now been collapsed into 3 phases. And this is in line with the 9 points that Fede was just talking to in the previous slide. So I'll just then clarify how we've then repackaged the program, because as I always say is that the program has not changed in terms of what? In terms of its core elements, but just how is then outlined or phased. It's what is the most critical aspects of it. So there are 3 phases that will then be working together over the next couple of months. And firstly, it's phase 1, which is talking about this concept of professional competence. And I think the question from Rachel is the one that for us, it then just confirms that the way that we are thinking about it will then be very useful maybe to someone who will be doing it for the first time, to say that what is the expectation? I'm coming from CTA, ITC. Now, when you talk to me about this professional competence and it being assessed, what are we doing? So that will be the first phase. And then the second phase, this is where now we are saying that, oh, now you understand what is a professional competence. Then how do you go about demonstrating it? And this you will see that the second phase and the third phase, they bear the same name. But the only thing that is different is that phase two, it's heavily guided in terms of this more support, just to make sure that whatever you will then be expected to demonstrate in phase three, it's absolutely clear. And just to then give you a glimpse, that is then what the demonstration of professional competence. But now, oh, you are now demonstrating professional competence through the case studies. So let's now walk through how then the program is structured so that you have an idea. So for the APC professional course, they will have, or the professional program, they will have a similar structure. But what will then set the comprehensive course apart is just the additional time on the first phase. So those skills will then be developed over a much longer period, where now we are making, where we are now spending more time. It could be spending more time looking at additional tasks together. But what we are saying is that the idea or the notion for phase one for the comprehensive course is that it's similar, but just over a longer period of time. So how then does it work? So firstly, it is to then define what is professional competence. And this is where we now go to the blueprint for the APC, the blueprint for the CASA. And our guiding blueprint is actually the CA 2025 competency framework, which will also be introduced quite soon in most training programs. And with that, we'll then introduce what competence, optional competence is, especially with how Cycle looks at it. Therefore, the kind of CA that they want to build. But to then summarize, they've got a very nice bubble where they say that competence it's actually an integration of one, technical competence, and two, a personal attitude and values, and three, enabling competencies. So that is what one imagines to be a CA, and there's a very colorful diagram that they have on the CA 2025 website and some of their communication documents. But every time when you're thinking about it, think about bringing together the technical, the personal values and attitude, as well as the enabling competencies. So I'll expand later what are those enabling competencies. But essentially, when we say you are competent, you are able to bring those skills together in your engagement, in your response. So in a work environment, if I give you an accounting task, I don't expect you to just give me the answer. I will expect you to walk me through your logic. And therefore, one of the enabling competencies that you'll be applying will be effective communication. And you might then need to consider the practicality of the agreements in probably advising on an appropriate accounting treatment. And therefore, you'll then be using your business acumen by demonstrating your understanding of the legal framework and so on. So that is what we are saying, that as much as it is an accounting task, for you to then say, I'm no longer just demonstrating technical competence, but professional, you will then be bringing these other elements. And if there are even questionable elements to the proposal, you will then need to demonstrate that there are guiding principles, values that I subscribe to. And as much as this might make us more money, this is not what we would like to do, because it undermines 1, 2, 3, which talks to the personal attitude and values. So that is essentially the concept of professional competence. And then, and that's what will then go into detail as to break down the ethics side of it, the social responsibility, corporate citizenship, and so on and so on. But we introduce all that. But because one of the fundamental elements is the technical, that you cannot demonstrate coverage, you cannot demonstrate depth of a response. And coverage, I'm saying that if I ask you to do something, it's where now you'll say that I looked at it and I could only see 3 things. But when there are probably 10 things that are not in order with regards to that response. So if that is then the issue, we are saying that your technical is not at a point where it allows you to see the issues. And one of the things that we've then come to recognize, or come to just reflect on quite intently, is that it is increasingly difficult to demonstrate professional competence if the technical is not at an expected level. So that means what we want to then get right together is to make sure that the technical is up to scratch. And to Rachel's question is that, what does up to scratch mean? Does it mean that I have to now go back to each and every CTA and ITC video? Do I have to now look for my files again? Do I now need to start working through the question? And the response from Fede was that no, you don't need to. But then what we will then be doing, because in phase 1, we want to then work on a task basis. You'll then have a task to say that, yes, this is an accounting issue dealing with IFRS 3. Then we will then advise to say, ahead of the discussion, ahead of working through this task together, we want you to work through these videos. So if you are fine technical wise, then you might say that, oh, maybe I don't even need to work through the videos. I just need to work through the material or directly with the standard, and I'll then be able to understand the issues coming from here. And that is then how we will then be engaging on the technical, that the expectation is not for us to then just say, go and revise accounting, but it will always be in a structured manner based on the tasks that we'll introduce after our first session there. So we'll then give you tasks and say that, all right, over the next month, so you'll have time to then plan and work through your schedule appropriately, and say, okay, you've got a month. This is our touch point on this task. This is our touch point. These are the videos. So what we just want you to do is to make sure that before you go and talk about this demonstration of professional competence, you need to make sure that in relation to this task, your technical competence is what? It's revisited, it's refreshed, and it's up to scratch. And if there is new knowledge, because that's what happens in the APC, sometimes you get standards that we didn't cover in ITC or CTA. So we'll then say that, oh, all right, we want you to demonstrate your ability to learn new technical issues or standards. And what then that falls under in terms of that bubble that I was just referring to is what they call lifelong learning. That as a chartered accountant, we don't expect you to just know what you've been taught, but we also expect you to learn new stuff. And that's where the technical competence come in. And as I'm saying, it will then be structured based on the task so that you understand that as much as you might have all these resources, come a case study, you will need to learn how to use the technical knowledge, being your videos, your notes, your embedded, your standards, in order to be able to respond to specific tasks. Then the next one, it's what we then called ethical leadership, developing your ethical leadership skills. And as I was saying, one of the elements of professional competence are your professional attitudes and values. That in making a decision, there's that element not be technical, but will be very important. And you'll see that this is increasingly becoming a demanded kind of skill from key executive as well as from organizations. Where now, when you are reviewing their policy, you will then need to say, did you consider the impact on the employees? Did you consider the impact on the community? So as a chartered accountant, you need to learn how to embed those values into decision-making processes. So in the next part of developing professional competence, that's what we focus on. That in ideally, how do you think about that? How do you identify ethical issues? How do you deal with ethical dilemmas? Even though you might not be able to resolve them under an assessment, how do you deal with them? How do you identify them? That's what we will then focus on. Then, and I think the most important thing, especially coming from ITC, where ethics was always aligned to codes of good governance, to some prescripts like the CPC, you'll then find that in the real world, they are just those elements that just doesn't sound so right, and you might need to address them. But again, the legal prescripts like the Companies Act can offer some guidance in that regard. So that's what we then talk to. Then I said that the last bubble is then the enabling competencies. So the enabling competencies, these are the embedded set of what thought process that if now I say to you that I'm planning to invest in a logistic a company, and you might then, from a technical perspective, think about sources of financing, valuation. But then these enabling competencies say that if you get that part right, there are other factors that need to be considered for this venture to be successful. And when you start talking to me about but the economy, the kind of market that I will be saving, when you talk to me about the strategy of other competitors, when you talk to me about some of the legal agreements that have been proposed to me and alternative investments, you are talking about what we call enabling competencies. And those are captured as one, business acumen, the ability to bring context into a decision. A decision can make sense, but when you put it in a context, it can actually fall apart. To say that, yes, this is what we can do, but then I say, however, the economy is here, the government has just said this, and now there's restriction. So what will you do? That could then make a good decision to suddenly be a terrible decision. So we then want to help and work together to be able to bring context in your responses, to bring context in your decision-making processes. So you'll see that SAICA then calls that part critical thinking, decision-making, that you bring it when you're about to make decisions, and your ability to break down an issue, look at whether it makes sense, whether it's there's other elements of the decision missing, and this could also be reduced to a task where we say evaluate the accounting policy, review evaluation, review this NPV proposal, and you start breaking it apart to say, is it right? Does it make sense? What is missing from it? And therefore, how can this impact a decision? And then business acumen. This is where we are now saying that context is therefore very important. And that is the second enabling competency. Then the next one is the effective communication skills. That through your training contracts, I hope you might have been exposed to it, where you see that someone in your team or in other team could have a good idea, but the inability to package it and deliver it accordingly could then result in that proposal not being well received. So it is very important that when you communicate, you are able to do it in a clear manner. You are able to respond to what has been asked from you. If I ask for three things from you, then a good response is the one that will address those three things. By merely addressing two out of the three, it could result in me saying that no, but I can't trust you to take ideas across. I can trust you to write directly to the CEO. I can trust you to write directly to so on and so on, because your communication has not proved to be effective. So in certain instances, we find that candidates understand the issue, they have the right technical knowledge, then we ask them to review something. Then it could be that when I am reviewing or marking, I missed the point. And I missed the point because it was not well articulated. It did not really demonstrate that the issues that were at play were well identified and therefore were being addressed. But the moment someone then says, no, and then I don't understand why you give me credit for this. And I say, but why do you want credit? And they start explaining, and you see the clarity, or you start hearing the clarity, that's where sometimes things break apart. Because when we are assessing, the only thing that we've got is your script. And if things are not clear on your scripts, it means that you put yourself at risk of what? Of failing to demonstrate professional competence. So it is very, very important that we then deal with that element as early as possible in the program. Then the next one, you will then also come to realize that at work you don't go just sit at your corner and then you start working. But for all those that are in audit, they will realize that there's an audit team. Then also in the APC assessment, the teams come in because you will have what we call a pre-release information, an outline of the case study information that describes the company and some of the issues that they are facing that will later be developed. And you might then be sitting in and saying that my experience or my expertise is audit, it's tax, and I don't see the issues that I'm supposed to see when it comes to this pre-released information. So what you might then need is someone in your team. And this someone will obviously be value adding if they've got different exposure, different competency, their strength is different to yours. So that is what we want to then put more emphasis on, because this is a very important part of the assessment. And we really do, during some of these engagements, uh, got to understand that a lot of our candidates struggled to make it work. And sometimes struggling to make it work, there's essentially three levels for us for when it comes to teams. It's either level one, the team is working so well, the team engagements are, people are not wasting each other's time, people respect each other, people challenge each other. So that is usually the unicorn level of teamwork. And we see it in very few instances. And we want to see more of it. Then there's the second one. The second one is a team that somehow seem not to care about what the others are doing. So this could be just a non-value adding team or a neutral team, that whether I come to a meeting or I don't come, it seems it doesn't matter. We share feedback, we share research, and when we come, we don't challenge each other. We just look at each other. Person one tells us what they did, we say good. Person two tells us what they did, good. I say what I've done, good. and we go separate ways. So that's a neutral, non-value adding team that is less desirable. Then the one that should be avoided, it's where you are finding you're wasting each other's time, where people are sending each other bunch of information that is not read, that is not relevant, and they expect the other team members that they cancel the meeting, and so on and so on. So that is the worst part of it. And we've come to realize that effective teams really make an impact, because you then ask to say, but you didn't do so well in case study one, case study two. How did you now turn things around? And then they'll say, no, I changed teams. That is the only thing that they did. Not like they now got more competent in this such. It's not like they now come to discover these things, but it's because now they've realized that the team that they were in was not working, and when they moved, then they found what is an ideal kind of state. And those are the kind of issues that we want to deal with at that part of the program. And at that part of the program as well, we then want to introduce another team member of yours, but this one will not be involved in the work as you will be doing, but will then be offering guidance and support throughout the program, and that team member is your mentor. So that is where now we will spend time in terms of what is our vision in terms of the mentorship program, the kind of profile of the mentors that we select, the training that we provide, and how we then foresee the engagement between yourself and the mentors working out. And then to clarify some of the questions that were coming up earlier, given the revised structure of the program. So we have then now say that there are elements that we don't want to formalize. And this is how you get to build a relationship with your mentor. And that part, we are saying that we'll leave it up to you. But the elements that we want to then make sure are formalized and you get an aligned and consistent support through the program will then be after phase one. We'll want you to have a touch point. And because this is your mentor and this is your own development, the expectation is on you to arrange for this session. You'll then be able to arrange them via My Universe, which is your learning platform. And you'll then select your mentor and say, this is when I'll propose we meet. Then the admin team will then set up the meeting, and you and your mentor will then meet and engage on these issues. Then second compulsory point will be at the end of phase two. And then on phase three, after each and every one of the primary case studies, case study 1, 2, and 3, will then want you to meet to catch up, reflect, and plan ahead. So those are the 5 compulsory sessions that have been put together. And the way that one will then look at it is like 1 session per month. That's what we are saying. 1 session per month. So the idea will be around May will be the end of phase 1, then around May, then June, July, June will then be phase 2, and then first case study around July, August, September, or somewhere there. But when you reflect, it's about 1 engagement per month. And I don't know whether that sounds to be a lot, but in our view, we don't believe that's a lot, because this will mean that you are not as if you are deviating from the program. It's not like you don't have a program to work on with your mentor. You've got clear issues that you will then want to address and make sure that before you move to the next phase of the program, those issues are sorted. And from what we've heard in terms of the engagements, we find that some meet like for 2 hours in a session, meaning that it's like 10 hours in 5 months. And over time, one could be engaging via WhatsApp or just call to catch up once in a while. But we'll really want you to engage in this part of the program, because it then forms the foundation for us. Then before we jump off phase one, we then introduce this concept of integrated thinking. And integrated thinking, that's where now we are saying we separated the bubble of technical, we separated the bubble of attitude and values, and we separated the bubble of enabling competency so that we can communicate and work on those. Then now we are saying we are bringing them together. Then one could also be saying that, oh, okay, so in terms of the facilitation, how will this work? So as I mentioned and fairly clarified, there are various methods that we use. And when it comes to incorporating technical competence, we will then be using either a newly developed screencast to address some of the issues, especially if the issues were not covered in CTA. And number two, we will also use CTA and ITC videos on some of the technical matters. Then number three, we will also work with some of the practical reports, updates from the JSE, from the Accounting Standards Board, and some general information that is relevant. And this could be where now it could be articles of recent events and so on that we can touch on in our engagements. In some instances, it will be working through the CA 2025 framework, unpacking it in a way that is that is easy to digest and see its relevance in our journey together. And the other element will then be the tasks. So the tasks will then be shared with you in our first session. And in that first session, we'll then have touch points to say this is when we will be catching up on this, so that you can manage your schedule better. Understanding that because you work in different environments, the time that you will be able to commit to the program and the timing that you'll be able to commit to the program will be different. That's where screencasts come in, because you can have this in advance, you can work through it when you've got an opening, but we then have touch points of lectures where we'll want us to meet each other. And those sessions, Fede did mention that they are on Saturdays, and they are not on all the Saturdays. We've really reduced the number of Saturday sessions that we would like for us to have. And in some cases, if the session is quite short and focused, we might have a quick evening lecture, but nothing as hectic or intense as you might have seen in, say, CTA or ITC programs. So this could be like first session, it could be something like 2 to 3 hours. So rather than take your Saturday, we could then have it in the evening. Those kind of those kind of thinking. But these details will be further articulated in the timetable that we'll be sharing with you before the end of the week. So that is phase one. And as I'm saying that by the end of phase one, the idea is that you need to understand what we mean when we talk about professional competence. How do we then demonstrate it in the context of what? In the context of a task. So in this case, we'll not be working with fully blown case studies, but tasks. So it could be task extracted from previous EPC programs or previous APC assessments. So those will then be communicated at the beginning of the program. But the idea is to work through tasks. Then come phase two. Phase two, we are saying we are introducing or reintroducing you to the SAICA APC. So what is the SAICA APC? What is their expectation of you? But once you have mastered phase one, it then becomes clear to be aligned with what SAICA is looking to achieve. Then we're going to now start talking about some of the technical terms relating to the case study, like triggers, that what is a trigger and how do you use a trigger? What kind of action does a trigger demand from you? That's what we'll then be covering. Now that you have the triggers, we then talk about how and what to research. And this will then be linked back to what to phase one, how we were using the videos, how we developed business acumen, how we developed critical thinking. So we'll then be revisiting those in the context of the APC assessment. Then we'll then be working together on mini case study A. Previously, mini case study A used to be a first point of sitting for the candidates. But come 2022, we'll not be sitting for mini case study A, but rather we will be journeying through mini case study A together, where now we will work in detail through the PRI, the pre-release information, and work in detail through the information on the day and the task. What will then be your task will be the writing of the response. But the other analysis part will then just help you to understand the expectation in that regard. And then the next part, will then be the evaluation of competence. One of the things that we then want to really emphasize in the guided approach, it's how to use the marking grid to review your own attempts and to review the attempt of others. So we'll then have separate engagements where now we go through a marking grid, and you will then just come to understand that the marking grid is like saying that when you give someone a task and you then say, and I come and say, oh, who is doing this? Then you will say that, oh, no, that's team member B. Then I'll say that, okay, when will you be happy with the work that they've done? When you say that if they are able to tell me that the cash that is in the bank account exists, then I'll be happy. If they're able to tell me that they've done independent verification of their accounts or confirmation of their accounts, I'll be happy. When they tell me that they have seen that the bank statements or the bank accounts are in the name of the company, I'll be happy. So that is what a marking grid is all about. It gives guidance on how you then assess whether you'll be happy with someone's response. And that's what we'll then be working on together to say that, all right, we've gone through the analysis of the pre-release information. We've gone through the analysis of the IOD. You have now presented a response. We are then working through your response to help you understand how your response will be assessed. And that is the foundation of the APC, the marking grid and its friend, the strawman. So then then we will articulate how those things work together in determining whether someone is competent, highly competent, borderline competent, limited competent, and not competent, or no attempt at all. So that is where we talk about the evaluation of competence. Then, how do you then use the marking grids in order to learn from them? And what do you do if you're starting to find that there are gaps here? So when we present our marking grids, we also have what we call the EPC assessment competency framework, which captures what we will have covered in phase one. And you'll then be able to say, after I've done self-assessment, when we've gone through together, if you miss these indicators, it means that you still have a problem in the bubble of technical competence. If you miss these indicators, you have a problem or developmental gaps in this bubble of what? Of business acumen. So that is then how we use the competency framework to then help you link back to then the developmental areas. So if you then find that you are getting feedback that your technical is not so strong, then you know you can go back to phase one and work through the technical there. And if you get feedback that your business acumen is not where it needs to be, then you know that you need to go back to phase one, engage with us on phase one's material to make sure you bridge those gaps. Then once you are there, we are saying that give now this mini case study B a shot. This will then be a situation where you write this on your own, you will analyze the pre-release, the information on the day, and you will respond to the task on your own. But again, a shorter version of the main case study. But we'll just want you to be able to have that comfort of how you demonstrate professional competence. Then we will give you further guidance in terms of self-reflection, where we give you our view of the analysis of the pre-release information, the analysis of the IOD, and what our response or what will an ideal response look like, so that again you can undertake the process of what? Self-reflection and self-assessment. So that will then be the journey up until phase two. And this journey, you will now see that it's not only yourself, but you've got the mentors and you've got your group members. So the group members, as I was saying, they are involved in helping you work through the pre-released information. And that is what will also then be reflecting on and giving you better guidance on it before we even get to the phase three case study phase. In the phase three case study phase, we've then come to standardize the case study process, um, but more aligned to what we were doing this year. But in terms of the timing and the release of some of the key information, like one, the guidance or the admin behind it, especially for venue-based assessments, and we will then want to make sure that everything related to that, including the admission letters, they are then released before you even get the PRI. Then you will then get your PRI. After you get your PRI, you then in the second week on a Wednesday, you will have to attempt the case study. Then in the third week, being the Monday immediately following the case study sitting, you'll get the reflection pack, which is again an analysis of the pre-release information to give you an opportunity to what? To assess yourself, as well as what? As well as undertake a reflection. But one of the things that we'll then be introducing this year, next year, it's then us sharing some of the scripts with you so that you can go and assess, so that you then have a view when we do our feedback. So with that view, you will then be comparing that view with ours, where we are saying that the 3 scripts or 2 scripts we've given you, this one we gave a C for task A, C for task B, LC for task C, BC for task D, and you'll then be able to start thinking about, wait, do I still have gaps in understanding or mastering self-reflection? Did I land on where they are? Did I apply my professional judgment maybe on a very light note and so on? So that is the focus then, so that you can really get to master this self-reflection. Then fourth week is now dedicated to mentorship engagements, and that is one of the compulsory touch points. Then fifth week, we release the results and we open an opportunity for you to query the outcome of the results if you are not what? If you are not clear on how we got to that outcome. But as Freddy mentioned, we have a process where we give you feedback But if you're then saying that I got the feedback, but either I don't agree or I don't see how someone got to this outcome after they've told me this, that's when we'll do what? We'll then engage. Then we'll also give you an opportunity to consult. Consultations are included in your tuition, so there's no additional tuition, additional fee that is applicable. So you can book consultation with any of us. But generally, we recommend just one session with a lecturer in order to just make sure that you give others an opportunity to engage. And the sessions are limited to about 45 minutes, longest being an hour. Then lastly, there is a break to give you an opportunity to further reflect. So that is how the case study phase of phase 3 will then look like. And again, individuals, assessments, but an option to engage with your group and the mentor. So in a nutshell, that is how the program will then be structured. And as I was saying, the comprehensive, the primary distinctive factor is what? The time that is available under phase 1. And you will then see that there's what? More time and an opportunity for what? For more tasks for us to work together on. So that is that. Any questions that you would like to clarify? Moto, hi.
Hi, Rendani. Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask if this program will be able to accommodate people who might be outside South Africa for a couple of months in the events where we have to go to we have to physically write an assessment and I can't make it because I'm not in South Africa. Are alternatives or yeah.
All right. No, thank you for that. So just to clarify, do you mean in terms of the delivery of the program or for just the assessment part of it?
Just the assessment part of it.
All right. Yes. So from an assessment part of it, we will then be able to cater for you, but it will unfortunately not be on a venue basis. So what we then normally do, because we use the SciCam e-writing tool, what it does is that it once you run it for the assessment, it closes other application on your software. So what we did before the software, which is but I think yeah, next year we're planning to do it differently for case study 1, is that all right, you will then be afforded an opportunity to download the assessments just a few minutes before we start. And that will be anything between 15 to 30 minutes, where you'll then download the assessments and be given an opportunity to print if you prefer the printed version. And at the same starting point as the other candidates, bearing in mind that there could be time differences, then you will start the assessment. When you start the assessment, the moment you in the assessment, that we have a dashboard that then tells us that yes, Komoto has logged in and she has started the assessment. That means she has the same amount of time as everyone else. Then, as the time goes, it then becomes that part of going back to the bubble of personal attitude and values, where now we then need to trust each other that yes, you will be working alone and the attempt that you will be submitting will then be your own. Then come the end of the assessment, the software closes automatically. So when it closes automatically, we just then require you to have internet access so that it can be able to submit the assessment to us. And another thing with the software that is advantageous is that if you keep it connected to the internet throughout the 7-hour period, it saves and back up on our on the SciCas what do you call this, servers. So that's something that we also recommend, just in case something goes terribly wrong. What will then happen is that the assessment is saved. I'm not sure about the intervals though. And come the end of the assessment, it locks itself automatically and it submits as soon as it gets what? An internet connection. So there's some benefits of ensuring consistency in that regard and just monitoring how one goes through the assessment. But unfortunately, because the assessment the assessment tool or the e-writing software closes other application, we can't use Teams. But there were assessments like mini case study A and B. In the current way, we're using Teams with our international or outside South Africa candidates, where then they will just project their videos on request, and also their screen on request, and then there will be someone invigilating to provide online support and so on. But given how the software works, it then has this element of trust, and it has an ethical declaration where you need to then confirm that yes, this is my work and my work alone, and so on. So that is, we provide support to candidates that are outside South Africa, as well as candidates that are in areas where it's not economically feasible for us to provide support. But yeah, there are guidelines that we publish to say the assessments will be facilitated on a venue-based basis if the number of candidates are so much and so much. So that part we will also communicate in advance, just so that you can plan accordingly.
All right. Thank you so much, Rendani.
No. All right. I don't see any other hand. Freddy, anything you want to add before we close this part? Did we lose Freddy? Cassie was responding to some chats. All right, but yes, so this is the structure. So the timetable that will then be publishing will just then be articulating the timelines as when this will happen, for how long the sessions will then be happening. But I think this will then give you an idea of the journey that we'll be taking together. All right. And maybe we'll come back. So just then, in terms of wrapping up, so in terms of the tuition, so the tuition for all our programs for next year have been standardized to then be 14,000 regardless of the program out of those three that I've mentioned. And for the candidates that were with us before, the fee is reduced by 50%. So there's a 50% discount. Then payment plans are available, which is 25% on registration and 15% of the tuition on a monthly basis until settlement. And if we then assume someone coming in at the beginning of the program, it gives them, I think, until August or September to fully settle the tuition fee. If your employer is going to pay, we've got a tool online where you can just submit the details of your employer and then you'll ask them to confirm. If they confirm, you'll then be treated as fully paid. In most cases, we've got arrangements with the employer firms, but if your firm is new or they've got different processes, the finance team is able to assist in that regard by complying with the process or confirming the arrangements that we normally run with other firms. Then the program, as it stands, with the fourth wave seemingly taking its toll, we confirm that the program will be on an online-only basis, but it is our intention to then run some of the classes in our Midrand campus on a face-to-face basis. So that is something that we are currently looking at. So initial plan was to go back fully by having our campus back, but we are not sure whether that is feasible with everything that's going on. So then probably what we can do is to see if we can just host the classes also on a need basis. But we'll then communicate this, but I doubt it will then be an issue of Jan. If it's to happen, it will likely be fair end of Feb or so, just given the a significant setup that needs to be done to prepare accordingly. Then the program will mostly be focused on RSA context, meaning that the issues that you will likely expect to see in the tasks will be either SA company, SA legal environment, SA social economic environment, and so on. And the sessions are delivered via Teams. The links are available on my universe on the scheduled dates. We have also revamped the timetable to make it easier to follow online and to access the classes and any of the previous classes. So it's something that you will get to see once we kick off the program. And for those that would like to then either use the small admin office at campus to meet with groups, that is available with tea stations and coffee stations at your access. Then mentorship, I've spoken about how we've planned to incorporate these ideas, but we did catch up with the mentors. They did affirm their commitment to support you in the 2022 year. Most of the engagements we were really showing that we've got people that are invested and that are committed to your development. Yes, there were some glitches here and there that we identified, and that will be what looking to make sure that they work optimally next year. But the idea is to provide that non-academic support. Then assessment structure, as I said, 3 primary case study plus the sub. First case study, non-venue based, and then the other 3 are on a venue basis. So on a venue basis, this is where now you just rock up with your file. You will find the pieces then connected at the venue. You'll find, yes, the internet, the software installed, and all you just need to do is to do what? To respond to the tasks. And then greater flexibility with enhanced support. So as I was saying, phase 1 and 2, as you will have seen, there's increased degree of support and just guidance that we'll be providing just to make sure by the time we get to the case study phase, you are on top of the work. The online portal, for those that were with us, you will then get access to the 2021 program up until the end of March 2022, sorry, not 2021, but until the end of March 2022. And you'll also have access to your previous assessments in case you then want to use it as an opportunity to do what? As an opportunity to reflect and see your growth over time. Registrations will officially open tomorrow, and then they will continue to be open. The brochure will indicate when we plan to close the registration for the comprehensive course. So if you are a first time and you want to jump onto this early starter program, we highly recommend it. If you still want to start at a later point, you'll then see the dates for the program that will be launching after the ITC 2022 results. But the program, the primary difference, as I said, will be how phase one is delivered with more support and more foundational approach to the APC comprehensive course. But that is everything that we wanted to talk to you tonight about. Any questions? Fedi, anything you want to share? Are you back? All right, it seems that we lost Freddy, but let me see if there
Nope, I'm
any.
here.
Oh,
Been
okay.
shouting whilst on mute.
Oh wow, sorry.
Yeah, I think you've wrapped it up quite nicely, but I see there are some questions in the chat box, Randani, that probably we can address. Area responded to the one, and then
let me check.
And then about the timetable. And yes, the timetable will be shared with the brochure by the end of the week. And then Swazi was asking, where are venue located for other assessment, and does that mean candidates in remote areas need to arrange to travel to those venues? Maybe if you could just address those questions, please.
All right. Yes. So Swazi, in terms of the venues, our venue identification process is as follows. We firstly try to secure the SICA-based venues. So in other words, this will then be the venue that SICA uses. So failure of which we then look for the closest venue to the SICA venue. And like for Midrand, we could not secure Galaga for some of our assessments, but then we secured a conference center just opposite Galaga. And then for Pietermaritzburg, I think we were able to secure the SICA one, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, for the other areas, we were able to secure the SICA one. Yeah, Polokwane I can confirm. And then in some other areas, we were then just able to confirm venues closer to that. In terms of our then approach is that if then the venue is the SICA venue, you'll be, and that's the closest venue that you'll be sitting for the actual APC. That is then the venue that will expect you to sit for. So if now you are saying that I'm saying I'm at Makwarela Venda there, and then the next location for you, it's Polokwane, and Polokwane is about 100 kilometers away from your venue, then we will expect you to then use the Polokwane venue. And the idea is because the assessment it's got a very big component of psychology. And if you are not probably accustomed to traveling to the specified venue, and you have to travel for that specific assessment, sometimes it can easily throw you off. So we just want you to get comfort with the stress that comes with traveling to a faraway venue. But if you stay at close to a cycle venue, then that can easily be what resolved. In areas where we then look at it and say that we cannot secure a venue that you will normally use for SICAM, and to then travel to the venue that we've designated will be too much of an issue, then we do then allow you to write the assessment on a non-venue basis. So that is how we then approach the venue-based assessments.
Thanks, Rendani. Maybe just to deal with the stats in detail. So on the, and let me start with APC 2020. So in 2020, we had approximately 60 candidates, and we certified about just under 45 candidates. So I think it was 44 to be quite exact. So the success rate of certification was about 75%. And then those 44 candidates went and sat for APC 2020, the SAICA one. And when they sat for the SAICA APC, if I remember correctly, 12 candidates made it, and our pass rate was 27 or 28%, which was significantly lower than what we would have had hoped for. So it was not a good success rate. And relative to other professional program providers, they had about about 38%, and another had about just over 50%. So if you guys remember, the APC 2020 results overall were quite low, but our Black pass rate was ahead of other professional providers. And we had to reflect in terms of what led to the low success rate. And I think one thing that led us to us reflecting and responding to it was the fact that we probably saw a significant improvements in the performance of our candidates, and we thought they were ready for APC, but in retrospect, some of them could potentially not have been ready. And in 2021, we tried by all means to add additional tasks to strengthen our marking grids and our strawmen, to try to make sure that we are as closely as aligned to SAICA the way they assess as possible, to make sure that there is a high success rate between the candidates that were successful in our program relative to those that are then going to be successful at SAICA APC. So for APC 2021, we had about 250 candidates. We had about 250 candidates, and of the 250 candidates, our pass rate or success rate was significantly lower than what, again, we would have anticipated. So we certified 10% of our candidates to go and sit for APC 2021. And this was really concerning, and some of you would probably know if you were part of the program as to what the reasons are. We had to have a feedback session with all the candidates to say why we got to where we are. And that's why at the beginning, when I was dealing with this success rate and certification, I mentioned that the key issues that were popping up And when we're talking to the training officers, when we're talking to SAICA, we're around both the technical element to say candidates, our population, in our population, our candidates lacked technical proficiency, and as a result, their depth in their discussion was not at the level that is expected for an entry into the profession. And secondly, the coverage was also not at the standard that was expected. Okay. So Tamsanqa, that's actually what happened. And yeah, I mean, our candidates would have seen from case study number 1, it was really, really tough in terms of the fact that there were no successes from the first case study. Then when we got to the second case study, there was some improvement. And when we got to the third case study, there were significant improvements of our candidates. But when we then had to offer candidates the SAP, the opportunity to write the SAP, to make sure that we send as many candidates that are ready to SAICA as possible. So I think those are the key things that happened, Tamsanqa. Does that mean we have a 10% chance of getting the certificate? I wouldn't say so, Tamsanqa. You have 100% chance. If you come into the program and you really work hard at the on the program, I think one of the things that you should always have the mentality on is the fact that you should not think the certificate is an absolute guarantee that you'll get it. You have to work hard at it, and you've got to continuously be developing and reflecting as to where things are going wrong. And after reflecting where things are going wrong, implementing those learnings in the next case studies and in the next, we will always do our utmost best to make sure that you are successful at the end of the program. So when we enroll candidates in our program, we expect 100% pass rate. But if a candidate is not ready for entry into the profession, we won't just send them just for the sake of it. So I absolutely do not expect a 10% pass rate in the 2022. I expect close to 100%, and hence the early start, hence the new focus areas on elements that were challenging to candidates to make sure that we get to the 100% pass rate. I'm glad you can wait, Tamsanqa. Any other question? What is going to be different this year on this sitting? How I really wish to join the program, but it's so scary. And quite a well-noted fear, Ntokozo. I really understand where you're coming from, because the 10% is quite concerning. It was concerning to us. It's very alarming. But like I said, if you give this program 100% commitment and your dedication, and you really, really use every resource possible to make sure that you are successful, you will be successful. So I would say, Nontokozo, try it out. You will, it will really make a difference in your life. And the nice thing about it is, at the end of the program, when I certify you, Nontokozo, you will really look back and say, I deserve this certificate, because you would have worked for it, and you will really feel confident in yourself that, oh my word, I am ready to be a CA. Because before that, before you go through the program and really understand what it develops, you won't be able to tell, but it really develops your key skills. It's really not a hard program. With hard work, commitment, dedication, you will get there. Randani?
Hello? Hello?
Rachel, you may go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. I don't know if it's probably been answered this question, but maybe I am expecting a different answer. Would you have you obviously you've done an analysis of what happened with the 10% and all of the other unexpected pass rates and stuff. Would you say there's something that you might have changed based on what you have seen is a major problem that you've picked up from previous candidates? And if there are those problems, maybe if you can highlight a few, and what have you done to make sure maybe that obviously I'd say maybe 80% of the work comes from me, but how would you sort of provide comfort for me to say that, okay, whatever that was experienced in the past that made us get this pass rate that we got, if any of that portion was related to something that we can do something about, have that something been done? And if there's been, what is that something, you see? So I just I just want to know, I mean, the learnings, and then what are the learnings and what have you done to improve the program for this year? And also what I can do to make sure that I don't land in the 90%. Thank you.
All right. Okay, let me give it a shot, Freddie. So yeah, as we've really got to go back to the drawing board, just to then engage with what we consider to be our key stakeholders, which were then the candidates that were in the program, and also ourselves as the team, and also the mentors, as well as the training firms. Because yes, I think everybody, including ourselves and the candidates that were in the program, were quite disappointed with the outcome, to say the least. And I think one, from our side, we then looked at our program to say that did it really probably should it have included elements that were not included, and therefore maybe what we were then assessing was then misaligned to what we had walked the journey with the candidates. So when we looked at that, we then reached the conclusion that it seems that we had put a program that, when we reflect, we are saying that it had the elements that we will expect someone entering the profession to have had or to have demonstrated. However, what we then realized is that there could have been more emphasis on some elements of the program, and also just in terms of how they followed each other. And through the engagements, from those that were successful, from the results that we saw in terms of some of the tasks that seemed to be a problem, that's where we then said that it seems that there could be more work that we could do on the technical side. And also, it is to also put it much early into the program. So the phase one that we just spoke to, it is really following that reflection to say that when we look at the tasks, we then realize that a lot of candidates were not giving the level of coverage and breadth that we would have expected from the entry-level chartered accountant of someone going to sit for the APC assessment. And as I mentioned earlier, the issue of coverage and depth is an issue of what? It's an issue related to technical, because for one to be able to see the issues and be able to deal with them adequately, one needs to really be strong. And because the technical is not something that we teach in the program, but rather we had assumed, as everyone had what ITC as a base, we realized that because of the different profiles of candidates that we have, there's probably a need to then emphasize how does one then develop this before each and every assessment, and then to say how does one then use those triggers that were mentioned to then work through the PRI or pre-release information before the actual assessment. So that was one, and that's one significant change that we are hoping will also have significant improvement in the overall outcome throughout the program. Then number two, it is this then the concept of enabling competencies, that they too, we've now we realize that they from our program, they came probably a bit late. And I previously will then go through the APC assessments, start working through the PRI, IOD thinking, and so on. And then we then thought that maybe what we can do differently is to then prioritize the development. And the key word here is the development, because the way that the, 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 the professional program was designed was that it was supposed to supplement a training program. And I think when we started going through the case study, we realized that we are at a point where some of these things that were supposed to be supplemented, they actually needed to be developed. And it is some of the thinking that we then thought, oh, maybe let's take it even down to our ITC level, because we are seeing some of these things quite a lot, to say the skills of critical evaluation, that some of the candidates and even employers were then saying that, yeah, we've noted the kind of critical thinking that is expected. And for some of our trainees, they might not necessarily be there at the level that one will expect them for by the time of the assessment. And therefore, the professional program can then play a significant role there. And what it therefore means, it means that we then needed to change our focus to then developing. And then you'll see that the verbs that we are intentionally focusing on is developing. Because if you look at technical competence, you have the ITC. It's unlikely that at this level will teach you something new, but will then need to help you to say, how do you incorporate that? How do you revise that? But now with these other skills, we are then realizing that we need to take charge and do what? And focus on developing some of the skills. And for that to be effective, they also needed to be uplifted to the early parts of the program. So as Freddie was saying earlier, that it's not so much of the elements of the program that is changing, but it's so much about the timing of their delivery, the way that they are then being delivered, to ensure that there is a significant element of development, that by the time we say demonstrate this, you are saying that I'm confident what this is. I'm confident what it's all about. I'm confident in raising these issues when I'm given these issues and so on. So for us, the critical elements were what? The critical elements were just the foundation. And that's where the timing of the extended period is coming in to say, let's get these elements right before we even talk about the APC. Because the APC is supposed to be an assessment of these skills, these competencies, and therefore it is important that they are developed or worked on before we even talk about it in phase 2. And therefore in phase 2, it is all about how do you demonstrate them in the context of what? In the context the APC of the Psycha APC assessment. And that for us, it's something that we are really, really hopeful that it will turn around this significant decline or this significantly low pass rate that we saw in 2021. Sizwe? Good evening.
So in terms of the 90%, right?
Yes.
Was it like a constant thing to say they are not competent throughout the program, or was it fluctuating?
Yes. So to just then touch on the concept of evaluating competence, right? I think maybe that will then also clarify. So there are 2 levels of assessment, but then in the program, then there are 3 levels of assessment. So the first one is task level. So task level is that a full case study normally has about 8 tasks. And then you will be expected to achieve competence, not in all the 8 tasks, but in most of the what? In most of the tasks. But then the issue is that not all tasks account or have the same weighting. There are some tasks that have got more weighting than the other. So it is not always a given that someone that has got 4 C's will then make an overall C or demonstrate competence in that case study. So there are issues like which tasks have got more weight. For instance, accounting tasks always have more weight than any other tasks. And in some cases, it means that if you get LC in the accounting tasks and you get 5 C's, you can find yourself not being assessed as competent in the task, in the case study. And that is because just in terms of that Babu and Psycha, what Psycha is then looking for, they will then say accounting, it's one of the tasks that they've said that you will always see in an APC case study. But the others, they are saying that you may or may not see. And because of that, there's then a greater emphasis on accounting, for example. So it could be an example of avoid a LC in accounting for you to demonstrate competence in what? In a particular case study. So that is where there is the what is it an interaction between the task outcomes and the case study outcomes. And then in some cases there could be some ethical issues that could impact your outcome. Like if now there is an ethical dilemma, and maybe we can agree as a team that this is something that is what? That is unacceptable. This is something that is morally incorrect, or it's socially or generally accepted to be morally incorrect. Like maybe for falsifying accounts, embezzlement, fraud, and so on. And you find yourself as a candidate suggesting that since we are under pressure and we might lose this property, we might need to then just agree to pay this bribe, then that could be something that raises red flags for us, and it could end up in you not being what? Competent. And that's where professional attitudes and values will come in. And I'm just trying to highlight that there could be some tasks that are there that have got more weighting. But as I was saying earlier, where the issue became a pervasive issue is around the tasks that have got a strong a technical element, where now it could be that it's a revenue transaction and we are asking for something to be reviewed, for something to be done. And we are then finding that there are 15 things to address. We could then say we want just 7 for someone to be competent. And we are finding that candidates may be struggling to deliver those 7. And they might be landing on 5, they might be landing on 4, and so on. And in that case, it means that they've not achieved sufficient coverage. And that will then result in them not being what? Not being successful. Then the next part that I was saying that the extra level is one of the case study. That the case study again will depend also on some of the things that are being assessed to say critical thinking. If you look at 2020 APC, critical thinking seemed to be the core of that assessment. Each and every task had a very strong component of critical thinking, but some had more or higher degree of critical thinking than others. But in those instances, you might find that those tasks carry more weight. And if you don't do well in them, then the overall outcome in a case will then not look well. Then the last one, it's where we talk about our eligibility criteria, where now we say we've got 3 primary case study plus a supplementary. And then we are saying that you need to achieve what? You need to achieve competent outcome in at least 2 of those case studies. Where now we are saying that's okay, if you miss it under 1, then that could be then an opportunity for you to improve in 2, then 2, then 3, and lastly, then this what? And lastly, there is the supplementary. And case study number 3 is one that has what? That has a great weighting, where now we always want or expect everyone to do well, because they've used case study 1 to really see where they are, and maybe they also did well, but then 2, it is then that opportunity for them to demonstrate that the gaps identified in 1 have now been addressed, and come 3, it is now a matter of what? Now of demonstrating that expected level of competence. So in other words, we then encourage everyone to work much harder on 2 and 3 in order to definitively seal that fate of success at the end of the program. But then if you're not there, that's where the supplementary opportunity comes in. Okay? Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. So let's wrap up these questions on the chat platform. What is the minimum hours that a person has to put in order to successfully complete the program? So it's an interesting one. And as I mentioned, that it really just then depends. So maybe then what I'll ask Taviso is that if someone asks you a similar question on ITC CTA, how will you respond to it? Maybe just to hear your view.
Hi, good day, good evening, good people. To be quite honest, when it comes to this thing, like for example, for me, at the end of the day, it's all about hard work. So no magic. Even though I've went through ITC and CTA, in order for me to pass, I still need to actually capitalize on my strongholds. And which is, for example, I know for a fact, a friend of mine told me that your technical competencies, you need to know them at the back of your hand. So for me, actually, I will study every day in order for me to pass this thing. I'm going to treat it as CTA, as ITC, even though I know that the assessment is going to be different, but I'm going to make sure that I'm particularly I'm well prepared when it comes to my technical competencies. Then I can be able to maximize on those things.
Oh, I hear you. And when we get into the program, there's some trend that you'll start seeing. So when it comes to accounting, I think accounting is always a difficult one to predict. But if you look at all the previous case studies when it comes to math, there's likely going to be a valuation issue. There's going to be a strategy issue. There's going to be an NPV issue. And that's almost a given in the APC. So those are some of the things that I'll say that when it comes to your technical foundation, don't double guess them. So if you have to then say, I'm giving myself, say the next 2 weeks mastering DCF, go for it. Then the next 2 weeks covering earnings-based valuation, go for it. Then another one, it's internal controls. More so because you are then positioned as an entry level chartered accountant working for a firm or for working for an organization. So that means you are now part of the team designing the internal control. Those are some of the questions that seem to always feature in the APC. So in terms of the technical, I will then say first prioritize those kind of topics. Then when it comes to the others, just a general read. It's always helpful. Excuse me. For instance, a general read will then have helped you in the APC 2021. They had a technical issue on lease modification in the context of what? In the context of the rental concession that were given as a result of COVID. That is an amendment to IFRS 16 that was introduced last year when COVID hit, and it was excluded from CT and ITC syllabus. But just a general read and also just attending some of these workshops that they do at work, the technical IFRS updates could have then helped you to then deal with the issues coming from there. They also had in the APC 21 a debt benefit situation, or not debt benefit, but revenue and IFRS 9 issues, which, if you think about it, it could be just one entry that you need to review. But then, if you to study for IFRS 9, you might need 2 months, and one might wonder if it's the optimal way to then spend your time. So it's those kind of things that as you get into the swing or rhythm of things, one could then identify some of the things that they could do or just how to think about things in a different manner. And I think that's usually the core, how to think about it in a different manner, how to just keep oneself updated in terms of the latest development and so on. Sure. So what advice would you give to a repeater starting the program? What must we be doing between now and March 2022 to be where we need to be prior to the start of phase 2? So if you'll then be repeating, I think it's always very valuable to start where you might be saying that these were the identified gaps. So these identified gaps, if you are saying that I'm still unclear, we will be available from the beginning of the year up until what? Up until March. So if you're then saying that, yes, this is where I am, and then this is probably my issues that I've identified, or maybe I'm still in the dark, I don't understand what is going wrong. Maybe this is how I've been doing things. You can help me understand maybe how I can change my perspective or change my views or approach. Then maybe you can take advantage of that to just say that, yes, I reach out to one of them team members, and then have that private session and just see what you could then be doing to address your own specific developmental areas, because sometimes that could be what you need to say that, yes, I've done this, I've done that, I follow this guidance, but this is what I'm still having, and this is what I'm still seeing. What can I do from here? So maybe that could then be the step that I recommend. So when we open in Jan, that is something that I will recommend to reach out and then have a session with one of us. Then, besides registration, when will the EPC program officially start? So we will then, so all that information will have before the end of the week, in terms of the registration, the closing dates, and so on. So as I said, SAICA just came out today to say that there will be a rewrite. So we just wanted to see where our candidates are and the kind of support that they might need if we need to incorporate something that's something that we'll just need to apply our minds to it to say that, okay, this can fit better here and so on, without impacting the program that we have thought about already. So before the end of the week, that answer will be available. Is there going to be candidate conversations with those that were successful? Of course. So of course they will be. So those normally come through after the release of the APC results. So definitely. All right, I think that's everything. If I've missed anything, you can just let me know. So that's all from my side. Any closing remarks? All right, seems I've lost video again. But other than that, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. So you've got the context on that slide. If you need to reach out, please do, and we'll then happily catch up and discuss anything that you may have in mind. But thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Randani, for wrapping up. Yeah, no further closing remarks from me other than what you said. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Yo.